My name's Andrew Jara, the director and writer of such films as Borderland, The Last Ones, and the upcoming Empty Space, which is about anxiety and aliens.
Hey guys. So, since we recorded this, we just found out that we've been selected at the Sacramento Horror Film Festival as official selection for Empty Space, and it's going to be our world premiere, which is awesome. And what makes it even more awesome is that it's going to be online this year, which means that anyone can get a ticket. Please watch it. It's my most personal film. It's dealing with a mental illness that I have. It has aliens. It's fun. It's scary. It's weird. Just give it a watch. We'll be sending out information on our social medias, Instagram, Twitter. So follow those and we'll get information out to you. It's next month in October. Yeah, and if you watch it, let me know. Yeah, I'd be very excited to hear what everyone thinks.
And I'm here because there's a pandemic right now, and we have nothing better to do. So I got my friend and sometimes producer, Joshua Epps, to come and talk about a movie that we both love. That's a universally hated by almost every horror fan.
I mean, it is bad. Let's not.
The movie we're going to be talking about is Freddys Dead. And Josh just said that it's not that good, but that's because he's a liar.
If that was the only Freddy movie I saw, I would be completely baffled.
Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know, I'm going to give a brief rundown of the Nightmare on Elm Street series, which everyone should know. But Nightmare on Elm Street, it's basically about this killer named Freddy Krueger. He attacks you in your dreams, but like each one of them is different in its own way, where part one is obviously the original, and it is the scariest, and people say it's the best, but not if you count by how silly Freddy Krueger is, which is how I count. And so Freddy Krueger is very serious in that one, and it's actually scary. Watching it again, there's some good scares in that movie.
I'm crazy after all.
Yeah, I rewatched that one recently, and it is it's like menacing.
Then you get into part two, which is like it has.
Okay, part two, he doesn't even kill anyone in their dreams. There's just none of the rules are like that's the true oddball, because nothing he's doing or what the kids are doing or what happens like lines up with the other six.
If you described anything in part two to anyone without saying that it was Freddy Krueger, they would have no idea that you're talking about Freddy Krueger, because it's like, oh yeah, he sets a bird on fire. It's like, for
It's
what?
like in a dream? No, just in your room.
He'll make it real hot. And for some reason, the parents won't care that it's like 96 degrees.
My God, it is hot as an oven in here.
And then part three is good. It kind of like, part three just was kind of like, okay, we're going to forget that part two ever existed. And we're going to go back to the story. So part two is obviously its own thing.
Hey, you want to go out and get a movie or something, hang out?
Then 3, 4, and 5 are all part of continuity. Like, they all have the same story. And after that, like, yeah, they each go off. But, okay, so here's my theory for Freddy's Dead. And in Freddy's Dead, the story is that there's only one kid left in Springwood, which is where they all take place.
He's going to make you help him. Because you're the last.
So in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, especially with Scream, but there was this kind of type of movie where it was a sequel to a franchise that was also kind of like a parody of the franchise. Like Gremlins 2 is the most famous one of these.
Right.
There's also Bride of Chucky, and especially Seed of Chucky do this, where they're making fun of their own franchise. And I feel like people sleep on Freddy's Dead, but that's my theory, is that Freddy's Dead is not just a sequel, but it's a kind of a parody of the original Freddy franchise. Because like, even like we were saying, the opening, every Freddy movie starts with a quote. One of them is from Dream Warriors is, "Sleep, those little slices of death, how I loathe them," by Edgar Allan Poe. Now, Josh, what is the quote that they use in Freddy's Dead?
Well, they use two quotes.
They use two, yes.
They use a Nietzsche quote about the terror of dreams, and then that fades out, and then it says, "Welcome to primetime, bitch," which is Freddy quoting himself.
Welcome to prime time, bitch!
In, I want to say, the third movie where he shoves a girl into a TV that is also his body. This was one of those things where when I saw Freddys Dead, it ruined me for movie quotes for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
That's also the philosophy behind them getting the Freddy mask. They're like, well, we wanted to get the first Freddy mask, but I mean, this Party City one looks just as good.
Yeah, the
So
Freddy does look terrible. It's almost like when you apply makeup, you put on like all the prosthetics and stuff, and then you match the skin tone, and then you like fill in like the sunken eyes, the bloody like scars and stuff. But it's like they forgot that part. They just did skin tone, and they're like, this is good enough.
it's so like you don't see at first it's not like that noticeable, but near the end when he's just in like broad daylight, it's bad. Like it's like shockingly bad. The movie starts assuming that you know everything that like kind of the general idea of Freddy.
One of my favorite scenes is at one point, and this is near the middle. He's in a house, and he's like, "I'm not gonna leave this house."
Nothing is gonna make me get off this bed.
And it's like, it's almost like his weird apathy to the events and to the fact that Freddy Krueger is gonna kill him.
He's tired that he's also in this franchise.
And also at this point in the general pop culture, Freddy Krueger had become like a cartoon character. Like he was kind of like the Crypt Keeper, where he even hosted Freddy's Nightmares, which was like a show where he was literally the Crypt Keeper.
Oh.
And yeah, so like every episode was just random monsters, and then Freddy would come in and be like, "Hey, that was weird. Welcome to primetime, bitch." Like just random like Crypt Keeper style intros and outros.
Yeah, kind of that was the thing at the time. Yeah,
you would think that the makers would be like, okay, well, Freddy's kind of been desensitized, so let's go back and make him really scary. But no, not New Line Cinema. They're like, let's lean into it and kind of make him like Bugs Bunny.
yeah, he is set. Like there are sequences of this movie, and I mean, I'm not even talking about the video game part because that's like its own, like that's on another level. But every interaction he has with John Doe, it's like there's stuff that's just straight out of like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Like it's bad.
There's a part where there's a deaf character named Carlos, and he doesn't like. Freddy takes off his hearing aid so he can't hear anything. Then he gives him like a Freddy hearing aid, and it makes him hear everything super.
Like a sinister one. Yeah,
it's a great sequence, but there is a scene where like because every sound is amplified, where water droplets are hurting his ears, and Freddy like pulls a pin out of his finger and drops it, and Carlos manages to catch it, and then he looks back at Freddy, and Freddy has like a bunch of pins in his hand. And like Carlos does that thing where he's like, no, and Freddy's like, yes, and then he drops them all. That is legit like what happens in like Looney Tunes with Bugs Bunny.
He also, because of that same sequence, he gets a small chalkboard.
Oh, yeah.
And this shouldn't matter, like, because obviously it's the sound the chalkboard makes, but not the size of it. But then he stretches it out while going like, oh, like he's doing the O face to be like, oh, as he like stretches it out.
Like the faint surprise.
Kind of, like he can scratch a larger surface area. Like, it's so nothing, but it is great.
Okay, so John Doe goes to like a halfway house, and then he's like...
Well, no, we should clarify. He is being thrown by a bus Freddy is driving.
Oh, right.
And he gets knocked from the nighttime dream world into the daylight of the real world and leaves a cartoon silhouette on like the sky of where Freddy like pushed him out of out of the town, out of Springwood into like the world.
Yeah, like I'll put it up, and it literally is like the human cutout. And the funniest thing is that they give him like a Bart Simpson spiky hair, but he doesn't have like he kind
has normal
of does,
hair.
But yeah.
His character is very slapdash. I mean, everyone's character in this movie is extremely like, hey, here's what they are.
Yeah, rewatching these movies, I was kind of like, I realized why I liked them. It's not just because of Freddy, but also like all the characters are pretty interesting. Like, I don't know if you thought this, Josh, but I lived in Los Angeles, and all the Freddy's movies have this weird like California feel. Yeah, like if you look at Halloween, that's obviously supposed to be like any town USA, you know, and like Jason is the woods, but Freddy, it feels like California. Like, especially like in the later ones, there's a character who's like a comic book artist. They deal with a lot of like, in one of them it's a model who, like, only people from California would think these are archetypes of teenagers. Like, in one of them there's like she wants to be a high dive swimmer. It's like, I just like to think New Line Cinema was like, what do kids love? And they're like, they love being an actor and high diving. And they're like, okay, we'll put those characters
There's
in
two
there.
main things. Sometimes in ways that don't really line up, but
Yeah, especially because they're not supposed to. It's supposed to take place in Springwood, I think, Ohio. But
they also, well, this one has, Trace was
Tracy,
the girl.
Yeah.
I don't know what she wants, but I do know she's tough because she wears like a military like surplus jacket and has like 3 or 4 rings on each hand.
Hey, first of all, my character in Borderland is tough because she wears a military jacket, surplus jacket. Okay, that's a staple, and we're not gonna talk shit about it.
It is true. It shows she's a tomboy who does things for herself.
Watching them all back to back, I realized that one of the tropes of the Freddy movies is a character who knows karate. And it doesn't happen that often, but it happens enough where you're like, why does this happen so much?
Yeah.
Like, in one of them, a character literally fights Freddy Krueger with karate, and then Freddy Krueger's like, that didn't work.
This, bitch!
Okay, so then you have Tracy, you have Carlos, and you have Spencer. And then Lisa Zane plays Maggie Burrows, who is the main counselor. Spoiler alert, Maggie turns out to be Freddy's kid. So there's a mystery about whose Freddy's kid is.
Do you remember the Krueger child?
Of course.
Who was it?
We're not permitted to disclose a child's real identity.
But on rewatching it, immediately the first flashback, because they show flashbacks as they're trying to figure it out, the first flashback shows that Freddy's kid is a girl.
It's her. Like, it's obvious right away. Yeah.
Yeah, and there could have been something where it's like, maybe they all have a dream where it's implied that they're Freddy's kids. Like, throw it up in the air, But no, it's just these two characters, and it has to be a girl.
Well, yeah, and because they even do, they do the POV of a little kid running and then sees her dad but doesn't see his face. And then they immediately cut from that POV to show it's a little girl.
It cuts to the POV shot, and it doesn't show the dad's face. But we know who the dad is. We don't know who the kid is. And so then cutting to the girl, it's like, no, again, you should have cut to the dad's face to show that it's Freddy, not to the little girl so we know who the girl is. And here's the thing. It introduces an interesting idea of what happens when Freddy's killed all the kids.
First, they go to a carnival that's happening. And and it's all adults. And they're like, where's the kids?
Which in itself, that is an interesting idea. The idea that Freddy has, he's succeeded where not only has he killed all the kids, but he's, ruined all the adults' life. It shows, this is where Roseanne and Tom Arnold come, and they're like, and she goes up to Tracy, and she's like,
this time, I'll be careful, and I'll hide you better so that he'll never find you.
Oh my, she's clearly gone insane.
Yeah. Well, I thought that was, it was a cool idea because... because I just rewatched the first two just to kind of get a sense of what are the other movies, just so I remembered it. And every time in that, it's almost a joke that someone will die horrifically, being ripped apart. One of the kids, the neighbor will die, the neighbor kid, and the parents are still calm down, you're acting crazy. Yeah. And it's the adults are so blasé about it.
The mom in the first one is so good because every time she'll be like, what's wrong, Nancy? And Nancy's like, all my friends have just been violently murdered. Yeah. And she's like, well...
Right home after.
School. It's don't let her go to school. She's clearly distressed. Let her stay home.
Yeah. Even at the very end of the first one, the kid across the street not only died, but died being pulled into his bed, and it would the blood seep through to the first floor. And then the dad's like, Nancy, go home and get some rest.
Look, honey, you just do that. Get yourself some sleep. That's what I've been telling you all along.
There's yeah, that's also Johnny Depp, by the way. It's weird you've referred to him as some kid.
Oh, yeah, that was, yeah. It's this is the logical endpoint, that the adults are completely, removed from reality and like insane. You actually, though, you skipped the best Carlos scene and probably the best scene in the movie, which is they split up briefly. The doctor and John Doe stay at the carnival, and then the three kids are like, "Oh, let's get out of here." And they're driving in circles, and she says, "Carlos, give me the map." But as he's unfolding it, there is way too much map. And he keeps unfolding it to the level that the map has completely like covered the back of the van, and he's just surrounded by it. And he finally opens the last square of map, and it says in large letters, "You're fucked." And then he wakes up, and she says, "Carlos, do you have the map?" He's like, "Yeah, it says we're fucked."
Yeah, well, the map says we're fucked.
And it's not scary. This is not a scary dream. Because if you were unfolding a map and it just kept unfolding, you would only be confused. Like, it is baffling, and it's a great scene. It's one of those scenes that I almost feel like, you know how like on Twitter and like social media, people will be like, "Oh man, have you seen that Meet Joe Black scene?" Like that kind of thing will come up every few months for like people who've never, like, this is the most bonkers scene I've ever seen in a movie. Somehow this has escaped that notice, and it's like incredible.
So John Doe's looking for him in a house. The house goes flying into the air. And then
Right,
and
well, because it also went flying in the
time.
beginning, like
Yeah.
in the beginning of the movie, it flies in the air, so he jumps. This time, it's flying in the air, and he goes, "No, I'm not going to," and that's when it catches on fire.
Right. And the first time it goes flying into the air, we didn't mention this, but it cuts to Freddy on a broomstick, and he says, "I'll get you, my pretties, and your little soul too."
That's actually the first appearance of Freddy in this movie, so it's also good that there's immediately setting up, oh yeah, he's a cartoon this time.
Yeah, back to the point. So he jumps out again, and then he does a parachute, and Freddy's like, "Did you think I was your dad?" And then he's like, "Yeah, I'm your kid." And he's like, "No, you're not." And so he cuts the parachute, and John Doe falls, and it cuts to my favorite scene in the entire movie. And this is the whole reason that I think that it has to be a parody of the franchise, because Freddy pulls out a bed of knives.
He like spikes, like giant,
yeah.
like giant spikes, Looney Tunes style,
Like
and he's pushing them.
And then after he gets it to where he wants it, he looks at the camera and he lets out like a sigh.
He does it exasperated, and then literally looks at the audience.
Like, can you believe I have to put up with this?
He was one step short of putting out a sign that said "It's a living."
So not only does he push a bed of spikes down, but then John Doe falls on the bed of spikes, and that's how he dies. Like, not only does they do the bed of spikes thing, but they use it in the story.
So after John Doe's dead, they go back to the halfway house, and then they figure out that they can pull Freddy out of the dreams, so they pull him out and they fight him.
Stab him to like a support beam.
Oh yeah, she, like, at one point, Maggie, like, she gets the glove away from him, and I remember because the way the glove flies off of his hand is in and of itself like an absurd, like it's absurdly shot, but she picks up the glove, and then he's like, "I can teach you how to be me," or something like that.
He goes, "Try it on. I bet you'll like it."
Oh yeah, that's right.
And it's like, okay, Freddy, but she's been fighting you this whole time. Freddy's just like, I hope this works.
He's very surprised, but she then uses it to stab him instead.
And then she goes up to him, and she stabs him, and she says, "Happy Father's Day," and then she kisses him.
Happy Father's Day.
And runs, which kind of shows you that Maggie doesn't know what you're supposed to do with your dad. Because I've had my dad for a long time, and I've never kissed him on the lips and told him Happy Father's Day.
Right before because the dynamite's about to go off, and he turns and says,
"Kids."
Just before it explodes.
Yeah, he does say kids. I think if you kind of look at it as, oh, this is a film, like a kind of a parody, it's kind of like taking like a fun approach to the series, and we'll introduce some cool ideas, but mainly we're just going to try to entertain the kids.
Yeah, let's wrap this up, because the idea of 10 years from now he has killed all the people, like is like a fun idea. Like it's silly, but it's also like, well, no, this movie has to be silly, So it's like, if you're on board with that, then it's fine.
If I was gonna make this film and they're like, oh, it's about Freddy and he's killed all the kids and the town has gone crazy, I would make it very serious. But I wouldn't have had Freddy rolling out a bed of spikes onto the middle of the road, and I feel like that needs to be part of cinema. I mean, the difference between Freddy and everyone else, and it's why I like him, is because Freddy's full of personality, and like, you can either be devoid of personality, like Michael Myers, and that's scary, but you don't really want to watch a million Michael Myers, or you can have Freddy, who's full of personality, and like, I'll watch Freddy every week. As long as he's not hosting some kind of Tales from the Crypt show.
But it's also like as a send off, I think that works.
Yeah.
Like if they had made 4 more movies at this level, it would have been like unwatchable.
With Jason and all these franchises, there's 8 Freddy Krueger movies. So the idea that like, oh well, like we've had a bunch of serious ones where we try to be scary. Let's just have one where we're trying to have fun. Like, I appreciate that they went completely in that direction. And so I think that's a good point to end on. But if you are inclined to watch my movies, please do. We have another movie coming out called The Empty Space, which is in festivals. So who knows when that'll be out, but keep an eye on it. Thanks for listening if you made it all the way this far, and we'll see you next time.
Hey guys. So, since we recorded this, we just found out that we've been selected at the Sacramento Horror Film Festival as official selection for Empty Space, and it's going to be our world premiere, which is awesome. And what makes it even more awesome is that it's going to be online this year, which means that anyone can get a ticket. Please watch it. It's my most personal film. It's dealing with a mental illness that I have. It has aliens. It's fun. It's scary. It's weird. Just give it a watch. We'll be sending out information on our social medias, Instagram, Twitter. So follow those and we'll get information out to you. It's next month in October. Yeah, and if you watch it, let me know. Yeah, I'd be very excited to hear what everyone thinks.